trying different things. We were smoking funny things. I hate Kid Rock.
I'm surprised you know that song.
Anyway, welcome to another Shallow Dip, y'all. We're limiting ourselves to 2 topics today. Just so we're not.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. The goal is to stay around an hour.
We're limiting ourselves to 2 topics like I limited myself to 2 cans of Coca-Cola. I very frequently drank way more than that.
That was a beautiful full circle moment.
Thank you.
Anyway, if you're here, that means you know what the topics are. Today we are talking West Side Story and Marvel Studios' Hawkeye. So, I say let's get right into it.
Dive in.
Say it loud and there's music playing. Say it soft and it's almost like praying.
we just get absolutely DMCA'd.
Yeah, I know. So yes, we are talking Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. And before we get into like our general reaction and a couple things we enjoy about the movie, like I mentioned, it is directed by Steven Spielberg with the new screenplay by Tony Kushner, who's Tony Award-winning playwright. It is starring Ansel Elgort, Ariana DeBose, David Alvarez, Mike Feist, Rita Moreno, and introducing Rachel Zegler as Maria, with choreography by, I apologize in advance to this person. I believe their name is pronounced Janice Kaminsky. Of course, music by Leonard Bernstein, lyrics by Stephen Sondheim. The composer, David Newman, adapted and arranged the original score for this movie. So that's why there's a couple more, there's a few additional, measures added to several songs and stuff like that. He didn't change anything. He just kind of added some repeats and stuff like that. So let's just get into our general reaction, and we can talk about particular numbers and, things like that. I don't know about you, Kendra. Actually, I do know. But I loved this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of critics right now are just overwhelmingly praising this movie, and I think it's well deserved. We were talking a little bit before about Steven Spielberg and just some of his repertoire, if you will. Well, it's insane to think that the same gentleman who directed this new West Side Story also directed Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., The Color Purple, Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, War of the Worlds. I forgot he directed that. And the list goes on and on about all these things. And all of a sudden, he randomly does this musical, this, not obscure by any means, but, it's been, 60 years since the original movie came out. So he does this musical, and it's brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's just it's an absolutely stunning movie, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, I just want to hear maybe some more of your thoughts. I could just go on and on about how much I enjoy this movie. So,
I watched West Side Story, the movie, the original movie, over and over when I was in high school. It's definitely one of my favorite movie musicals. So that being said, it would have had to been the best possible scenario in my head for me to come out of the movie theater feeling like, wow, they really did it justice. Mm-hmm. And it even exceeded that.
Right.
There were, and I'm kind of glad it wasn't just shot for shot remake.
Yeah.
With different people. They added different things. They had the whole new screenplay.
Yeah.
And even entire numbers. The entire I think mainly of is it called Cool?
Yeah, Cool.
The whole reasoning behind that entire number completely different.
Oh my
between
God.
the two. Completely different.
Yeah.
For the better, in my opinion. So there were a couple things, and I'm glad that it wasn't just like, okay, I'm watching a shot-for-shot remake of the original.
Right.
And they were just like, let's do it with maybe actual people of color.
Yeah. So before we move on, because I have a feeling I know where the next couple things you're going to, but I do want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the screenplay. So Arthur Lawrence was the original, wrote the original book, like the original script for the stage version and the film, the original film of West Side Story. And not that there was anything wrong with it, but I think there's very little of that original book in this movie. I think the only thing in this particular new version of it that is left is the finale. You know, where Maria, spoiler alert, but like, come on.
It's the same as the original movie.
Yeah. Where Maria has the gun and, you know, goes around. I think that was the only scene that was like verbatim the same.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely think this updated screenplay, they don't update it in terms of like, it's still a period piece.
Right.
And it still deals with all the same themes, but it brings it about. It was completely necessary. And I think it's the only way you make West Side Story work in a new age.
Yeah.
And something I really, really love about this screenplay is that it added such depth to all of the main characters. Like, for example, I love that, you know, the reason Tony isn't... I'm getting into some story stuff, so if you're watching this, you know the deal. Spoilers, but it's West Side Story. Come on. So I love that Tony is struggling with, you know, being a former gang member, and he's struggling with, like, he almost killed someone, and that's why he doesn't
And he
want
went to prison.
be. What's that?
He went to prison.
He went to prison. Yeah, so like he's struggling with something, and it's not just like, oh, Tony got a job and he's all
leaving
hunky
us all
dory now.
behind. Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, I love the original movie, but it's a little hard to believe that Riff and Tony were like best of buds in that movie, just because like one seemed so like clean cut, and
Yeah.
you know. Anyway, don't get me wrong, still love it. 10 out of 11 Oscar noms.
You suspend your disbelief for
Right.
stuff like that, and also the fact that it came out 30
60
years before we were born.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm in my head as a kid, I'm like, man, the past was crazy. Like,
Yeah.
none of that was reality to me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know.
And yeah, so the screenplay does things like that. It gives particularly Bernardo and Chino a lot more, like, they do. I said this when we came out of theater. I was like, they don't just feel like wet noodles, like they like just like kind of there,
Like one
to
note.
serve the purpose.
Yeah. Especially Chino.
Yeah, like I love that they gave Chino this story of like, and it wasn't like a lot. It's not like he had like a whole lot of screen time, but just letting us know that, oh, he's going to night school. He's learning how to fix these certain types of machines, and that he's got like ambition, and he just moved from the, like, you know, I like knowing these details about Chino, because if you're familiar with the show or the movie, you know that it ends with him making, you know, what we can only assume is the end of his life. Like he makes the
worst
he makes
decision.
And yeah, so just the screenplay, and it also streamlined a lot. You know, they don't do the war council at Doc's shop. They do it in the bathroom of the dance where they're all already
Right.
at. Things like that.
And Doc as a character is completely written out, who, well, not completely, but he was kind of just also like there to be there.
Yeah.
And I think they gave Rita Moreno's character,
Valentina.
a lot more of like a purpose than the original Doc, and also a new perspective of someone who's already kind of living in both worlds as like this kind of example of what Tony and Maria could have.
Right.
And even then it's shitty because they still treat her like... I thought that this was something interesting because as a person of color who grew up surrounded by white people, like only people of color on my block type,
Right.
surrounded
Right.
by white people. There's always that like notion of, or having friends, or especially like thinking of my dad's friends, because he comes from an entirely different generation, that generation basically, where people were a lot more horribly racist all the time, outwardly. There's like this idea that you're the exception.
Right.
And that's how they treated Valentina. All of the this isn't me quoting this. These are the racist fucking
Right.
Jets.
The Jets. Yeah.
Yes. All the other Puerto Ricans are horrible. They're coming over and they're stealing all of our housing, I guess, jobs, whatever. They're here. We don't like them, except for you.
Right.
You're the one exception because we took the time to bother to get to know you because you had a white husband.
Right.
And you were here and you had a position of somewhat power in the neighborhood as like the convenience store owner.
Right.
So we know that you're okay. It's just everyone else that's the problem. That is something that every person of color, especially those who grow up in predominantly white spaces, fully understands.
Yeah. And, you know, kind of touching on the Jets and the Sharks beef. First off, just the prologue they directed for this, they filmed for this, is just beautiful. The whole movie is shot gorgeously, but anyway. So what I really liked is that even though, yes, it is driven from a place of hate against foreigners,
Even though they were also...
is that...
They're all foreigners.
Yeah, and they kind of add a new perspective. They're like, listen, the reason they're acting like this is because they also didn't... We talked about something, you know, kind of going out, is that both sides are threatened. Like, they don't like each other due to racism and other various things, but they're both threatened by the gentrification. And I think that's such an interesting plot point to add into West Side Story, is that they're developing, you know, Lincoln Square, I believe is what it was.
Lincoln Center.
And they're buying up and knocking down and moving everyone out. And so the Jets already feel intimidated by these Puerto Ricans coming in, and then you have this, but they're not taking into consideration that, like, there's
a
overarching
grander
thing.
issue here.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting thing to add into the mix. One thing I really, really loved as well, and this is the very first thing you hear in any production. You hear, and I remember we were just sitting in the theater, and the way they played with sound design in this, where you could just hear the whistle, it sounded distant from each side of the theater. Every speaker, it just sounded farther and farther, or closer and closer.
Yeah, it was like in stereo, and they were changing which side you heard it from, which was super cool.
Yeah. So cool.
And also probably something you would only hear if you saw it in the theaters.
Yeah.
Unless you had surround sound, I guess. But it was cool.
Yeah, and of course, we were also kind of reminded, because I started listening to some of the songs from West Side Story, not the new not the new soundtrack, but like the old one, just because I was like, oh, I'm feeling in a West Side Story mood. But as we were watching it, we were like, damn, this score is fucking good. There are some bangers in this. So I love the new orchestrations for it, because it's very true. It's not like a trend on Broadway that I do not like, is that they tend to downsize orchestras. And I don't like that. I love the full sound of this. I love the additional measures they added to each song. Like the end of Tonight, they added 3 of the as they were doing the kiss, and I'm like, it makes it feel like so much more of a grand moment. Like everything felt so intentional. Before we get into the cast and everything, I just wanted to like mention Stephen Sondheim. Like this movie, the gist I got is that Stephen Sondheim really has a deep appreciation, not just for West Side Story, but for musicals. And it's just amazing that like he was able to do what he did with this movie. That's kind of my overall like.
Spielberg.
What's that?
Spielberg.
Yeah. What did I say?
Sondheim.
Oh.
It's confusing with the two.
R.I.P.
Steve
I mean,
S's.
yeah. So yeah, I meant to say Steven Spielberg. It's amazing what he was able to do because you can tell he has a deep appreciation for.
Yeah,
West
the
Side Story.
respect came through, and overall, before we get into like more specific things, I think the thing that stuck with me when I left was like, this is an instant classic. Like I just watched. It probably felt the same as when people watched it in theaters.
Yeah.
When it came out.
I had the same exact reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, he started crying in the theaters because he was like, "Man, 60 years ago,
Yeah.
people started."
But that was a real thing for me though.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I was crying all up and down.
He
this
cried
fucking
4
movie.
times. I counted.
But at the very end, as the credits were rolling, I just kind of sat there for a little bit, and I just started crying again because I was like, man, like I just, and this is gonna sound very cheesy, so I apologize, y'all. I was like, I just watched art. Like it was to me, I just had such a like a reaction to it that I just thought it was just such a gorgeous piece of work that we saw.
Yeah. So it's definitely like
Yeah. It's
one you're gonna watch over and over and over again for like the rest of your life.
It may be, and I'm gonna say this very confidently. It very well may be my favorite movie of the year. Like for me.
Yeah.
I just
really like Shang-Chi.
Well, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying Shang-Chi's up there. Hey, that may be my favorite Marvel movie of the year.
This might be the most artistic movie I've seen all year. Like the most well done.
Yeah, I just absolutely loved it. But let's talk a little bit about some of the specific things we enjoyed about it. Yeah, I didn't mind the changes they did to the Jerome Robbins choreography. In fact, I kind of like that they kept it Jerome Robbins style, but added like some new flair to it. And yeah, I mean, it really showed through in the prologue because that was very dance heavy in the original. But in this, it was you got to see a little more of the gang gusto in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think a lot of the moves, thinking about like the dance, like the dance scene. There's a lot of dancing.
The dance
scenes.
at the gym?
Mambo.
Yeah.
And just like, I just feel like it wouldn't have translated certain moves time-wise. Like it was, well, exactly. Like that was how people danced.
Right.
Somewhat. That's not how people dance anymore. So, and again, I wouldn't want to watch a carbon copy of the choreography I've already seen before. I would rather have something new. Because if I wanted to go and watch that choreography, I could just go watch
Pop in we got
the
it.
original movie. So I like that they kept it inspired by, with the same energy, because there's still like that same Mambo energy.
Yeah.
But with new stuff that was maybe a little bit more, not current because it's still kind of dated, but like in a way that we can still appreciate it without being like, oh man, what a silly looking move that they did because it's 60 years ago.
They retained the tension without like doing like dance fighting, particularly at the dance at the gym and during the Mambo, like that, like they're teenagers and that's like their way of like getting that aggression out in a safe manner.
These teens love to dance.
Yeah. And well, I mean, it is a musical. Come on now. And yeah, it was just cool that like it works because it still has that same like at any moment the dance could break out into a big ass fight. And which I loved. And the band was hot. And then they beautifully transitioned into the little waltz thing they do. Yeah.
Beautiful. Love it. See,
yeah.
that you can't change because that's fucking iconic.
Yeah, that was 10,000% Jerome Robbins. They did change the dialogue there, but again, it worked. I love the change from Your hands are cold. Yours too. You're tall. You're not. I don't know. It was very charming. And one thing we both noticed, and we talked at great length about, was there's a lot of Spanish in this movie.
Yes.
And there's no subtitles.
Yes.
And it is so refreshing because it makes it so much more real.
Yeah. Because the original didn't have very much Spanish at all because there was one person in the cast who, one of the main cast who was actually had all Hispanics. So.
Yeah. So, and
it just makes, they would be talking to each other in Spanish.
Yeah.
They all came over not that long ago.
And you would have the one person who's like trying to remind everyone to remember, practice your English. We're trying to relearn our English here.
Yeah.
But overall, like, yeah, they would be speaking to each other in Spanish. And also Puerto Ricans, they go in and out of Spanish all the time.
He says that as a Puerto Rican.
So yeah. It feels so much more authentic, and it adds to it. And I'm not fluent in Spanish. I know enough to at least understand most of what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. But even then, like, even with that in mind, you tell me, were you particularly lost at any point?
No, there were some times where, because I'm even less fluent in Spanish than he is, there are times where it's like, okay, I'm catching every third word and I'm stringing it together and it's kind of making sense to me.
Right.
But the truly important things, they'll either repeat it in English or you get it from the context.
Right.
Which, I mean, that's how every non-English speaker perceives most stuff if they live in the U.S.
Right.
Or somewhere where they speak English predominantly. Like, that's how they have to get through life, is piecing together the words that they do know. So I really appreciated that they took that step, and like specifically without the subtitles. And then it makes it feel like a little bit special if you do know Spanish. Like, you're getting the full thing. Like, this part's for you.
Yeah, I mean, they were cursing up a storm in Spanish as well. That's something I noticed. But again, all super authentic, and it just made it feel like if there was a certain type of grit that was captured in this movie that not a lot of filmmakers who film in New York capture. Not that they actually filmed in New York. I'm sure they filmed on some sort of stuff, but the feeling they got was there, and just having that type of culture there, and just the language, that it's not just one language spoken in the area, it was just a beautiful thing. Something I certainly appreciated. Something my mom appreciated, who called me after she saw the movie.
And I think that's something that can only be done authentically and realistically when you have a cast that reflects the people that you're trying to portray.
Yeah, and speaking of the cast, I didn't realize David Alvarez is not only a musical theater guy, he was an Army vet.
Really?
Yeah, learn that.
Thank you for your service.
I hope that didn't come off as facetious. It probably did. But also, yes.
Sorry, we were being serious.
I was going to say, something we saw last year when some of the first photos of the cast of the Jets and the Sharks were released, there was a bit of a backlash because there was a worry that they were going toward very light-skinned actors for the Sharks. But seeing the movie, I feel like there was a pretty wide variety of skin tones within all of the
entire gang.
Yeah.
Of the main characters, I guess you could say that there's really only one dark-skinned person of those main four.
I struggle because, and this is something I'm working on as a Latin person of color, is that, like, me myself, I don't particularly consider myself light-skinned. I know I'm lighter-skinned than others, but I don't consider myself light-skinned. So when I see other people who are like my skin tone and someone else refers to them as light-skinned, I'm like, maybe it's me? maybe I'm like perceiving myself the wrong way. But yeah, so yeah, a few of those folks up there were around my skin tone, and I was just like, I don't know that I would consider them light skinned, because at that point, I mean, I've certainly experienced racism based on my ethnicity and the color of my skin. So I don't know.
But is that because you're light, or it's because you're not white passing? I think that's a key difference that people don't understand. Just because I'm light skinned, I wouldn't consider myself white passing. You look at me and you're like, something's there.
Right.
Something's up. Don't know what it is. Could be anything.
Right.
But something's not all white there.
I don't think I'm either of those things. I don't think I'm light skinned.
I would consider you relatively light.
Really?
Yeah. You've got a medium skin tone though.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's just because based on my experiences, and like I grew up with cousins who.
Yeah, you have family that are very dark.
Yeah, and I have family who are very light.
Yeah.
So and I guess I am kind of in that in between skin tone, but
don't let the camera fool you. It's making him look way lighter and purple. So
yeah,
it's not realistic. Don't turn the lights down to show that you're medium skin toned.
But anyway,
but when I want dark skinned people, I want dark skinned people.
Right.
I want people who are obviously dark. But that to say, it didn't take me out of the movie. It's not something that I immediately notice off the bat, which normally, if that is an issue, I notice it immediately. And I think because you had one of the most important characters in the entire... Like, Anita is the backbone of that movie.
Yeah.
She's the backbone of the production. She's the backbone of every movie that there's ever been. That's West Side Story. So to have her be a dark-skinned woman... is fantastic. And I think that helped a lot. And again, you also don't want people to go in and be like, okay, we have to like draw a line 50% light skin, 50% black.
Right.
Like then we're getting into like specifics and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this production, this movie is what the recent Broadway revival should have been.
Is this Broadway revival the one that you've been telling me about? That's like they're doing a bunch of shit all different.
So
it's modern, right?
They've set it in modern. They had, I think, most, if not at least half of the Jets were people of color.
Cool. Makes sense for their whole thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, listen, our whole thing is to approach all of these things through the lens of essentially underrepresented groups.
Because we have to, because that's who we are.
Because there's not a big space in what we do that reflects people who look like us and who think like us. So it's not that I don't want opportunities for people of color.
But that doesn't make a lick of sense because I distinctly remember the Jets being racist.
Super racist.
You think Jets are going to be... They hate Puerto Ricans, but they're so cool with black people. They're fine. They're fine.
Like,
what happens if the Puerto Rican person is black?
This is in New York. Have y'all ever been to the Bronx? Y'all ever been to Brooklyn? Like, what the fuck? Spanish Harlem?
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so...
And just the whole making it modern is, like, very risky.
Yeah, and they cut out... I believe they cut out Somewhere. They cut out I Feel Pretty. They cut...
Anyway.
They changed... Again, I'm not against changing the choreography. I think they took out the snapping.
Yeah.
Like...
Iconic part of West Side Story is the snapping. That's like the first thing you see on the screen is the snap.
Anyway. But yeah, I think...
This was better.
Something you mentioned earlier, before we move on with our final thoughts on West Side Story, was... cool. So, interesting story. In the original 1961 film, the movie did something. They changed the order of a couple of key numbers. They changed the order of Cool and G. Officer Krupke. So in the Broadway show, in the stage version, Cool is sung by Riff and the Jets just before the War Council, where they are trying to keep cool and not get crazy before the Rumble. Mm-hmm. This is in the stage version. And then after, when the cops are looking for the Jets, after Riff and Bernardo are dead, the Jets sing G Officer Krupke.
That's not the time.
So,
hey boys, it's not the time for that happy-go-lucky song.
In the 1961 movie, because the show debuted in 1957, I believe. So in the 1961 movie, they switched the order. So where Riff and the Jets sing G Officer Krupke, and after the two have died and the Jets are on the run, they sing Cool. And to this day, Cool from the 1961 is one of the best musical numbers ever put to film.
Yeah.
It is.
Because, like, let's put it in, like, a parking lot and just have them be lit by the car lights. And they're exploring grief through the song Cool.
Yeah. So with this movie, we also see they move the order around a little bit. They still keep G Officer Krupke before Cool. But in this, the G Officer Krupke is sung while the
Jets are being
interrogated, and a refined anybody's is on the run from the cops, and on the run from Officer Krupke, played brilliantly by Brian Darcy James, who y'all know by this point. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's having a good year.
I love this for him. And so yeah, that was a really cool thing. In particular, I almost wasn't on board with what they did with Cool, but the more the number kept going, I was like, damn, I really fuck with this.
Yeah, I liked it. I was kind of on the same page in the beginning. I was like, this is weird, but I'd only ever seen that 61 movie. So I was like, it works so well as a song about, like, especially young men pushing down their emotions to just act fucking cool for like 10 minutes. But I liked that at the end, like you said, the way that they shifted the perspective, and it was like, it wasn't super serious in the beginning, if I remember correctly, and then it became super serious at the end, and then it was almost kind of threatening towards Tony. I appreciated that way more than I thought I was going into it. Right.
So two things. I've only ever seen Cool done as like a big group number with all of the Jets and the Jet Girls. And in this, it was mainly Tony and Riff with only a few of the Jets.
Like two, I think.
Two or three
other ones.
And it starts off with Tony singing, the opening line, "Boy, boy, crazy boy." Tony's never been in the song in any iteration. But this might be the moment in the show or in the movie where it perfectly captures why I love West Side Story so much, is because it truly is. It's arguably my favorite score, my favorite musical, just in general. And a big reason for that is because the way the production beautifully interweaves all the things that make musical theater great. And in this, they use the characters and they use what's happening in the story, in the script, where Riff just got a gun and Tony's trying to get him to not go to this rumble with this fucking gun. And the way they use dance to just tell the story of just like frustration and disagreement, and then to eventually get to a point of like frustration and anger, and up until we get to this really threatening moment. And it's just, it took me by such surprise that how much I liked it. And I was like, this is why West Side Story is so great. Is it just, I could go on and on about how much I love the show. I love what they did with America. I love that they got the whole block involved.
Yeah, they had a block party.
Yo, I was like, if this ain't the most Puerto Rican shit I've seen about these, they're they just start dancing in the middle. They start a dance party in the middle of the street, and the people in the cars and the traffic, they just get out of their cars and start dancing too. I'm like, man, can't take y'all anywhere. Yeah, Ariana DeBose as Anita, just amazing. She had a huge couple of years. She was she booked Hamilton and the Donna Summer musical back to back.
Hell yeah.
Last year she did The Prom, which this movie does her much more. She wasn't the issue in that movie.
Yeah.
The direction was the issue in that movie. But
yeah, I've never seen her in anything.
You saw her in Hamilton.
I didn't know that I saw her in Hamilton.
Fair. Yeah, and but
was
just
fantastic.
she is just sublime in this movie.
Here's the thing. I can't think of a single person who was bad in this movie. Usually you have like the weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a weakest link. Even Maddie Ziegler from Dance Moms, who yes is in this movie as one of the Jet girls. First of all, danced her ass off.
Right.
Second of all, was very good. Like, even just as a background character, I think she had a line or two in Doc's store, which was also fantastic. And yeah, I was like, damn, they were like, she's in this and she's really, like, everyone was super good.
Right.
And I couldn't tell you who I liked the most. But I will say, I told this to John when we were in the Chipotle parking lot after we did see the movie. My favorite two characters from the original movie are Anita and Riff. Don't ask me why I like Riff so much. I'm a big Russ Tamblyn fan. It just kind of stuck with me. But yeah, it like I can't even decide out of the main four, out of the main five, who I liked the most, or who I think had the strongest performance.
Right. No, they were all just absolutely brilliant. And I love that, she really captured just that you have to have a certain strength to play and like a confidence to play Anita.
Yes.
And it's more than just, the stereotypical like, oh, she's got to be sassy and spicy and blah 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 blah.
I would argue she's not very sassy.
No, she's got a strength about her, a confidence about her, and
a motherly quality too.
Yeah, they really amp up because she, Romeo and Juliet, she kind of takes on the nurse kind of role, and they do some new things with Valentina in that Friar Lawrence nurse kind of role. But just to see how like powerful she is in like the dance at the gym or in America, to just see the anger she brings to a boy like that. Not that Rita Moreno didn't. The only thing that about the original movie is that they dubbed Rita Moreno's voice for that song because I think she was sick.
Yeah, they did. Did they only do that to one song, or wasn't it a couple songs?
I think it might have been a couple.
Two.
But definitely that was one that they did that, and just the acting doesn't really match what the voice is doing, or I should say the voice isn't matching what the acting is doing. I should say. So I love that. I think I was listening to the soundtrack in my car, and I think A Boy Like That and I Have a Love were done live on set. The sound quality is much different. I think they did it live.
I heard a couple parts in a couple of the songs where I think they were singing it live on the set, because you could tell it kind of changed, the quality changed a little bit throughout the course of that song.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and that's a very powerful moment in the show.
Yeah.
So all that to say, we could talk at length about every single cast member in this, is how much they brought to the table. I want to talk a little bit about Rachel Zegler.
How can you fucking not? What a hell of an introduction, and introducing the main character of this entire movie. She was like, okay, I know that no one has seen her in anything because this is like her first big thing. She was like literally a child, I believe, when she booked this. Wasn't she still in high school?
She might have been 17 when she booked it, because she thinks she's only 19. She's 19 or 20 now.
Yeah. Fucking insane.
For your first...
Insane. Sorry.
No, yeah, absolutely. And
I can't wrap my fucking being around it. I can't.
She was a singer on YouTube. So she everyone knew she could sing her ass off.
Right.
The girl acted her fucking ass off. Yeah. Like, yeah, she was. We were just like, what a fucking way to just blow it out the water in your first try.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was absolutely glorious in this movie. And just like, fun fact for everybody. Try not to get too emotional talking about it.
Oh my God, don't cry.
Tonight is the balcony scene is my favorite duet of all time. When I tell you I was like a blubbering mess during this number.
Yeah.
But it was also because just what they brought to their interactions together. Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to push her for a best actress in a feature, in award season. Cause like,
I'd be disappointed if they didn't, cause that was insane.
Yeah. And,
unfair, actually. I'm mad.
Right. Cause she held her own, and not even that, she just blew it out of the water. Like,
not that I had low expectations.
No, not at all.
But I just didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Like, with someone who's introduced in like a movie, you have no frame of reference. I never watched her on YouTube. I assumed she could sing. I assumed she was going to be great because she was cast. She wouldn't have been cast if she wasn't great. I didn't realize she was going to be that good.
So let me paint y'all a picture. I have done like readings for like new musicals and new plays and things like that. And I've done those with the playwrights or the composers in the room. And that's a terrifying thing for me, because I'm like, if there's anyone who knows the script, if there's anyone who knows the scores, it's the people in front of me. Mm-hmm. And if I fuck up their work, you take something as iconic as West Side Story with someone as iconic as Steven Spielberg and Stephen Sondheim, who was working on this movie before he passed. Mm-hmm. He got to work on this movie. And Rita Moreno.
Fucking Rita Moreno.
Like,
I would be terrified. I wouldn't be able to sing a lick.
And then you have all of these, like, you've got Mike Faist, who I know from Newsies. He was in the Broadway version of Newsies.
Which one was he?
He might not be in the recording. He might have done it like on the actual Broadway version.
Was he the little lad with the voice, the high voice?
No.
That guy was also in Newsies.
Mike Faist played Riff.
Oh, John Mulaney.
John Mulaney Jr.
Body double.
I believe I could be correct. I mean, I
could be.
I could be incorrect, but I believe he in Newsies he started as one of the Delancey brothers before moving into Jack Kelly, I believe.
Okay, so he wasn't in the one recording that I've seen.
That's what I just said that.
What?
You were asking if he was the guy with the high pitched voice.
Yeah.
And I said
he might not be in the recording.
But yeah, so
also insane, also crazy.
You've got all these like musical theater folks, and you've got all these like, stars,
film folks. Ansel Elgort was like Egert. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Elgort. There's an L in there.
Yeah, Elgort.
Elgort.
Yes.
Ansel.
Elgort. Yeah.
He was like, I think more so when he was cast and they probably started working on it. He was pretty massive name, especially that you have to perform against throughout most of the movie. Also, possibly full offense intended, but sometimes he do be looking a little tired, like he's asleep.
Yeah, I think that's just his face.
I don't know exactly if that's his face or just like an acting choice, but then to have to work off of that and still make it like a very charismatic scene where I believe the two of you are in love.
Right.
It just goes again. I'm just singing more praise.
During the balcony scene when they're talking to each other and there's all these literal barriers against them, the gates, and I love movies. I love musicals.
The fucking guy, Yellow Jacket was in it. Of course he was.
Oh,
I clocked him the moment I'm like, that wig and that hat, they're not fooling me. I know who
Right.
you are.
Let's see
Bad
who
guy
that.
in everything.
Let's see who that was. It was Corey Stoll
Yeah.
as Lieutenant Schrank.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was great because he's an asshole, but
I also want to give a shout out to Iris Menas, who they played Anybody's. And so this movie I learned was banned. We're already talking way longer about this movie than I thought we were, but it's West Side Story, so we have to. Anybody's, for those who... So let me start at the beginning again.
oh my God.
This movie was banned due to the inclusion of a transgender character. Mm-hmm. When I saw that news, I didn't read the article because I was like, I was like, what the fuck? And I couldn't for the life of me think of like, this must be a new character because there was no transgender character that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. And we see the movie play, and I was like, fuck, I forgot about Anybody's.
Because Anybody's, especially in the movie, the only version that I can go off of, the original, was like just a little fly, just bothering people. And it wasn't ever clear what Anybody's deal was.
Right.
I think they were someone's brother sibling.
Right.
I think one of the Jet guys was their sibling, is what I'm trying to say, in the original movie.
Right.
But they were just kind of like, shoo fly, don't bother us.
So
until they became like an important part of story progression.
Right. I could be wrong, but Iris Menas, to me, sounds like a pretty Latin name. And when I saw them on screen, I was like, they got that curly hair. They're hanging out where the sharks are. What if Anybody's was a Puerto Rican who was ousted by their own community because they were trans?
I guess maybe, but I don't know why they would go running to the assholes.
Yeah, you're right.
Be like, let's join
Yeah,
up.
you're right.
No, I still kind of like the idea that Anybody's is someone's sibling. They didn't specifically mention it in this version, but I like that headcanon. But what they did do in this version was specify that Anybody's, for all intents and purposes, is trans.
Right.
Because there's a whole scene where Anybody's was like, I'm not a girl.
Right. And they kept saying that. They kept saying, I'm not no girl. And then they proceeded to beat the absolute shit out of one of the Jets. And I was living for it. I was like, I want Anybody's to win this movie.
But yeah. And I don't think in the original movie or production, if Anybody's was in the production, I don't think they were ever supposed to be some kind of groundbreaking trans character. I think they were just supposed to be a tom girl,
right,
who wanted to play with their brother.
Right.
So I'm glad that they took more of a stance in this one and said it outright. And also, Anybody's had more to do.
Right.
More of a backstory. I gave a shit about Anybody's.
Right. And it makes, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in the original movie, the line is something to the effect of like, we don't let dames in the Jets, and Anybody's like, I ain't no dame. Something like that, I believe. But, you know, they have that moment of, I told you I'm not a girl, you dickless, blah, blah, blah. And then, love that. That was a great scene. But it makes the moment, before we get to the awfulness, it makes the moment where one of the Jets says, you done good, buddy boy.
Yeah.
It makes it hit harder.
Yeah, yeah. 100%.
Because at that point, Anybody's, for the first time in their life, feels accepted.
Yeah. And it also made more sense why Anybody's felt so loyal to Tony, because Tony was like the only person who didn't treat them like a pest.
Right.
Tony was always nice to him.
Before we wrap up, that the scene back at Doc's shop with Anita is still a very difficult scene to stomach. And I mean, it's supposed to be that way. Mm-hmm. But something they did that was interesting. They really gave an example on how Afro-Latina women feel, how Afro-Latinos feel kind of twice the racism and colorism. Because at one point, I just thought it was interesting, the inclusion of this line where one of the Jets refers to Anita as Bernardo's black pig. And that's some, I mean, it's deplorable, but like, that's some real shit.
Yeah. Because, of course, they would be fucking
Right.
colorist because they're racist.
Right.
But I think you had it right the first time as well, because she's not just Latina specifically. She's a woman.
Right.
That's now 3 strikes
Right.
in the sea of racist white misogynists.
Right.
And then you kind of see that solidarity with the Jet girls.
Oh my
who are
God.
like, listen, we don't fucking like her either. We don't want her to be here, but don't touch her, don't hurt her.
That was what got me. Like, that was
Because
powerful.
that is so the fear of being a woman in the world and having awful shit like that happen to you pretty much supersedes everything.
Right.
No matter what race you are, what age you are, what nationality you are,
Beliefs,
whatever.
Yeah.
That is something that is just across the board experienced.
Right.
For every
Oh man. Like,
woman
sorry.
or
had a reaction.
yeah. So to see that that's another thing that's like that I don't think was ever included. Mm-mm. So the fact that they went out of their way to put that in.
And then they had the Valentina character say to them, I watched y'all grow up and y'all grew up to be rapists.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That was a crazy scene.
yeah. And yeah, I could go on and on. We could go on and on all night about the entire stream about all
I want to
things we love.
rewatch it.
Yeah, I want to rewatch. Hearing Rita Moreno sing Somewhere gutted me.
Yeah.
What they did with Tonight gutted me. Just because it has my favorite. Kendra learned my favorite piece of musical theater is when they sing "Good Night" to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a sweet moment. They made One Hand, One Heart make more sense in the context of the movie. The quintet was awesome with a lot of references to the 1961 movie. Yeah, it was
amazing.
It's another Spielberg masterpiece. What's interesting, and we can probably talk about this at another time. I feel like this is a more heavier discussion, not heavy, but like a lengthier discussion. Is I'm not surprised that people didn't come out in droves to see this movie because it is West Side Story. It is a musical, and there's still a lot of unknowns in this industry right now.
Oh,
what were you say?
Panorama.
In the Pandemi Lovato. I heard that at the improv show. I didn't make up that. I didn't make that up.
It's pretty good.
But anyway, but it is interesting that there are 3 big name musicals that came out this year, in theaters anyway. We had In the Heights, Dear Evan Hansen, and West Side Story. And all 3 of them, by industry standards, underperformed. Now, I personally find it interesting that 2 of those 3 musicals feature lots of Latina talent, and that's another conversation for another time. But my hope is that this movie will end up having strong legs, and that during the holiday season people will go out and see this movie because it really, really is a beautiful movie. Mm-hmm. And I think it keeps West Side Story a period piece while having something relevant to say today. And yeah, it's just a timeless story, and it's one of those that like until it's not relevant, it's gonna always be relevant.
Oh yeah. And it's never not going to be relevant, unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, we don't usually rank things, but if I had to give this like a star rating of some sort, I would say 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. I can't speak highly enough about this movie. And that's why I say it's probably my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah, I agree. It was very good. Instant classic. Definitely going to rewatch it over and over and over again. I probably like it more than the 61 movie. Oop.
I said that to someone today too. Oop. I think I might like it more than the original version.
I mean, you can't undercut, discount, or revoke appreciation for that original movie.
Not at all.
We wouldn't have what we have today if we didn't have that.
Right.
We wouldn't have a lot of the musical movies we have today if we didn't have that.
Right.
And there will always be like a special feeling when I go back and rewatch it because it's going to remind me of high school again.
Absolutely.
And there's just like, it's iconic. It's iconic.
Right.
But as far as which one I would enjoy rewatching more, it's probably this one.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Twitch. All right, see you next time.